She vanished one April morning, but no one knows for sure if she ever even left the house. In a small Missouri town where the city fades into forest with nothing but a leaf-covered trail in between, Emily Strite was staying temporarily at a friend's home. A 33-year-old mother of 4 with children living across 2 different states, she was trying to rebuild her life after a long string of mistakes, breakups, and heartbreak. On the morning of April 12th, she called her mother for the last time. Her voice was calm. She said she was heading to Illinois to visit her kids, but Emily never made it there. And from that moment on, no one, not friends, not family, ever saw her again. What's strange is, no one reported her missing right away. There was no scream, no blood, no security footage, just an empty room, a phone left on the table, and a feeling no one could quite explain, like she had never really been there at all. It took 8 days before her mother called the police. But by then, Emily's trail had already dissolved into the first rains of spring, and the woods behind the house had swallowed a secret that would take months to partially uncover. Partially, not completely. Emily Strite wasn't perfect, but she was the kind of person you remembered if you met her, because of the way she smiled softly when lying that she was okay, because she wrapped her kids' gifts in old newspaper but still added little hearts on the tape. She lived on the edge, always caught between trying her best and barely holding on. She was a mother of 4, each child a different age. The oldest was 17, the youngest just 4. None of the fathers were in the picture. Each lived in a different state, a different story, a different scar on her memory. Emily had lived in Illinois but moved back to Missouri a few months before she vanished. She was staying at an old friend's house in DeSoto, a quiet town where the woods begin right past the backyard. She had no car, no steady job, and often relied on friends to drive her to see her children. But one thing everyone agrees on, she always kept in touch with her mom, every day, even if it was just a quick message or a missed call. So when Emily stopped answering the phone on April 13th, her mother, Charlyn, instantly felt something was wrong. Still, she didn't call police right away. She told herself maybe Emily just needed a day to breathe. Just one day. The house where Emily was staying sat on the edge of town. No security cameras, not many neighbors. The friend she lived with simply said, she walked off that morning, said she was going to see her kids. No one knew which direction she went. No one saw her get into a car. No one knew if she took clothes, a wallet, or even her phone. There was only one thing left behind, her phone, sitting on the table, not charging, no lock screen, as if she was coming back in a few minutes, but she never did. In a town like DeSoto, an adult disappearing doesn't trigger sirens. Police didn't launch a full-scale search. A missing persons report was filed, and then nothing. But there's one thing even Emily's family didn't know. She once told a close friend, "If anything ever happens to me, look in the woods. I don't believe people just disappear without a trace." On April 13th, Emily's phone rang, but no one picked up. Then the same on the 14th and the 15th. At first, her mother, Charlyn, tried to stay calm, telling herself maybe Emily just needed a few quiet days or had already made it to the children's father's home in Illinois, where cell service was notoriously weak. But by day 5, fear had pushed past the limits of reason. Charlyn drove to DeSoto, to the house where her daughter had been staying. The friend she was living with said Emily left the morning of April 12th, saying she was going to visit her kids in Cahokia, Illinois. She left on foot, the friend said. Didn't say where exactly, just said, "I'm heading out. I'll be back soon." On foot? Cahokia was nearly 60 miles away. The answers weren't clear. The friend avoided many of Charlyn's questions. Inside the house, there was nothing left of Emily, except her phone. It sat on the table, screen dark, like it had been set down in the middle of an unfinished call. No wallet, no packed clothes, no sign she had planned to leave. Not even overnight. On April 20th, the missing persons report was officially filed. The Jefferson County Sheriff's Office took the case, but because Emily was an adult, there were no clear signs of foul play, and she had a history of withdrawing from stressful situations. The investigation started off passive. There were no search parties, no tracking dogs, no statewide alert. Emily's mother refused to accept that. She started handing out flyers on her own, knocking on doors near the woods at the edge of town, asking about surveillance footage at gas stations and local stores, but none showed anything conclusive. The biggest question remained unanswered. If Emily was planning to leave, why leave her phone? She had no cash, no car, and no reason to cut off contact with her mother for more than a day. Emily might have lived on the edge, but she wasn't careless with her kids or her mom. A few weeks later, a small lead surfaced. A local resident reported seeing a woman matching Emily's description walking along Frisell Road near the edge of the woods on the morning of April 12th, but no one thought much of it at the time. It didn't seem unusual. Not then. Police checked the area, but early spring rains had likely washed away anything that could have helped. By the end of May, local news had stopped reporting on the case. But Charlene never stopped searching. Time passed. Summer came and quietly went. Then autumn brushed against the trees in Soto, turning green to brown. No one mentioned Emily Strite in the papers anymore. Her Facebook profile remained, with the same smiling photo, but the concerned comments dwindled, then fell silent, until one late September morning. On September 28, 2024, a local man was inspecting an overgrown piece of property he owned near Frisell Road, about 2 miles from where Emily was last reportedly seen walking, when he spotted something strange beneath a pile of rotting branches. Small fragments of bone, mixed with dried leaves and a piece of muddy fabric. The police were called. The area was sealed off. It took the Missouri State Medical Examiner's Office over a week to confirm. The remains were human. Incomplete, no soft tissue left. But based on dental records, they belonged to Emily Strite. The media picked up the story again. For a brief moment, Emily's name returned to the headlines. But instead of answers, the discovery only raised more questions. How had Emily's body, or what was left of it, gone unnoticed in a location less than 2 miles from the house where she vanished for more than 5 months? Why wasn't the forest searched thoroughly from the start? Why didn't they bring in dogs, especially with belongings left behind and known proximity to the woods? And perhaps most baffling of all, the remains showed no clear signs of trauma. No knife wounds, no gunshots, no obvious fractures, no signs she had been dragged or fought back. The autopsy stated, cause of death undetermined, manner of death unknown. No one could say if Emily died from exposure, starvation, a fall, or something far worse. There was no weapon, no suspect, no trail, nothing but a long silence and a scattering of bones in a quiet patch of woods. But there was one detail that kept her mother awake at night. The body was found just a 15-minute walk from the house Emily had been staying in, directly along the path she would have taken to see her children. And it wasn't dense forest. Police said they'd passed through the area before, so why didn't they see her? Or did they? Because if Emily died in those woods that same day, how does a neighbor insist they heard someone calling her name 3 days after she went missing? When Emily's remains were officially identified, police returned once more to the house where she'd been staying, a modest home on the edge of the woods owned by an old friend named Miranda. Miranda was the last person known to have seen Emily alive. In her original statement, she told police that Emily had left the house on the morning of April 12th, walking, saying she was going to see the kids in Illinois. But when questioned again, Miranda's details began to shift. At first, she said Emily left around 9 a.m., but when officers asked if anyone else saw her, Miranda said, maybe it was closer to 10:30. I'm not exactly sure. She didn't remember what Emily was wearing, didn't know if she took anything with her. When asked if it seemed odd that Emily left her phone behind, Miranda simply said, she was forgetful. I figured she'd be back soon. But here's where things got strange. In the 8 days between the last known sighting and the day Emily was reported missing, Miranda never called anyone. Not Emily's mom, not a neighbor, not the police. When asked why, she said, I thought Emily just needed a few days. She's done that before. But records showed Emily had never gone more than 48 hours without contacting her mom. And Charlene was adamant. My daughter never leaves without texting me. Not once. Not in 33 years. Then came another contradiction. Doris, a 74-year-old woman who lived just one house away, told a local news station, I saw Emily standing on the porch the night of the 13th. I remember because it was drizzling and I was worried she'd catch cold. That directly conflicted with Miranda's statement that Emily left on the morning of the 12th and never returned. Police asked Miranda about it. She denied it flatly. No, Emily didn't come back after she left. But there were no cameras, no texts, no proof. Just the words of 2 women, one who lived with Emily and one who didn't. And between the two, only one had something to lose if the truth came out. When police examined Emily's phone, the one left on the table, they hoped for a clue, a final text, a missed call, maybe even a map. But the phone had no SIM card, no password, as her mom had said, and no activity after April 11th. The browser history had been wiped. All messaging apps were logged out. The only thing left was a single unsaved note, half finished. I just need some time, but if you find this, no one knows who you is. No one knows who erased the rest. Emily wasn't tech-savvy. According to her mother and friends, she barely used her phone beyond calls and simple texts. But there was something else, something far stranger. The phone had been powered on again on April 14th, 2 days after Emily was supposedly gone. It connected automatically to Miranda's home Wi-Fi. Then it was turned off completely, and stayed off. Police didn't mention this detail in their early statements. It only came to light when the family hired a private investigator who subpoenaed the local internet provider. Emily was believed to have left the house on April 12th, but her phone, the one everyone thought she had left behind, connected to Wi-Fi from that same house 2 days later. So, who turned it on, and why? When asked, Miranda insisted, "I didn't touch Emily's phone. I didn't even know it was there." But police found her fingerprints on the back of the phone case, along with one other faint print that couldn't be identified. They didn't release that detail to the public, and they never labeled it as evidence of a crime. Then came a subtle but chilling twist. Security footage from a small convenience store about a mile from the house captured someone walking along the roadside around 5:40 p.m. on April 12th. A woman in a green hoodie hurrying in the light rain. The image was grainy. It wasn't clear enough to confirm the person's identity, but the body type, the gait, they looked strikingly like Emily. So which is it? Miranda said Emily left in the morning. A neighbor claimed to see her on the porch the next night. And now, this footage, possibly showing her walking away later that same afternoon. It's as if every clue tears the story into smaller pieces, like a puzzle being pulled apart instead of put together. And at the center of it all is one truth no one wants to say aloud. Maybe Emily never left that house at all. At least, not by choice. We believed the word of the one person who said she walked away. But what if that person was never telling the truth? In the weeks after Emily's remains were found, her family urged investigators to expand the scope of the case. Not just to the site where her body was discovered, but back through the relationships she had tried to leave behind. Because Emily didn't just vanish, she had been running. She once lived in Cahokia, Illinois, where her 3 older children still lived with their father. And according to court records, Emily had repeatedly accused her ex-husband, 39-year-old Marcus R., of abuse. In 2021, she filed for a protective order. In her statement, Emily wrote, "I'm afraid that one day he'll do something I can't come back from. I don't have video proof, but my kids have seen it." That order was only valid for 90 days and later dismissed due to lack of witness cooperation. Close friends say Emily had been terrified of Marcus, but also deeply conflicted. She wanted her children to have what she called a normal family. She often hid the threats, the emotional control, because she didn't want to hurt her kids any more than they already had been. When Emily disappeared, Marcus told police he hadn't seen her since March, a month earlier. He claimed they had no recent contact and said he had no idea she'd planned to visit, but Emily had told her mother she was going to Cahokia that very morning. When asked about this, Marcus said, "I never got a call or a message. If she was coming, she didn't tell me." It was a clean answer, too clean. Then, an unexpected clue surfaced. Data from Emily's phone showed that on the night of April 11th, the night before she vanished, the device pinged a cell tower in Cahokia. Hours later, it reconnected in Soto just before dawn on the 12th. Why would Emily go to Cahokia, then return immediately? Why tell her mother she was going to visit, instead of saying she had already gone? A few hours, that's all it was, but it may have been the turning point for everything that followed. What does it suggest? 1. Emily met someone, possibly Marcus. 2. The meeting went badly. 3. She returned to DeSoto, scared, shaken, or unsure what to do next. If that's true, Miranda may have been the last to see her, but not the cause of what happened. Because sometimes, the person who hurts you isn't the last one to see you. They're the reason you showed up in the first place. When Emily's family tried to press investigators to look into Marcus more closely, the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office pushed back. There's no clear evidence, they said, and he has a basic alibi. He was home with the kids on April 12th. What was that basic alibi? His own word and the word of his children, one of whom was under 10 years old. There were no cameras, no receipts, no GPS data, just spoken words and a system not built to question them. Emily's friend Lynette told police something chilling. If I ever disappear, start with Marcus. I'm not sure he'd do something, but I know he watches me. It was recorded in the report, but nothing was done with it. Just one more warning from a woman that no one believes, until it's too late. The private investigator hired by Emily's family uncovered something else. On the morning of April 12th, Marcus's Facebook account briefly showed active status in DeSoto. Around 6 a.m., the activity was later deleted, but a third-party tracking service had archived it. There's no way to confirm Marcus was physically there, but if he was, why? When confronted, Marcus told investigators, "I didn't use Facebook that morning. Maybe my phone auto-logged in." Emily's family didn't buy it. They knew how afraid she had been. Afraid enough to move to DeSoto, believing that distance would keep her safe. But safety isn't real. Not when the person you're hiding from always knows where to find you. Police said they didn't find Marcus's DNA in the house Emily had been staying in. But no one knows how many people had been in that house after April 12th, or how many surfaces had been scrubbed clean. No cameras, no weapon, no scream. Just an absence. The absence of a woman who once loved deeply, feared silently, and spoke truths that no one listened to, until it was too late. And when Emily's remains were finally found, incomplete, without a note, without a known cause of death, that absence became more than a question. It became a quiet accusation. Someone let this happen, and someone has stayed very, very silent. Maybe Emily didn't die because of one person. Maybe she died because too many people turned away. After months of suspicion, questioning, false leads, and quiet dread, a strange feeling began to settle over Emily's family. No one said it out loud, but everyone could feel it creeping in. What if everyone was wrong? Marcus, the first person many suspected, still lived in Cahokia. He continued raising Emily's children. He didn't move. He didn't change his number. He might have lied, but he didn't run, and there was no sign he'd left the state on the day Emily vanished. Not in phone records, not in credit card transactions, not in license plate tracking. Miranda, the roommate with the inconsistent story, had her holes and contradictions, but she allowed police into the house 3 separate times. A polygraph showed no clear deception, and investigators found no traces of Emily's DNA on anything that could suggest violence. Even the phone, the one that mysteriously came online on April 14th, now couldn't prove much. Maybe someone turned it on, or maybe it auto-activated. No cameras, no logs, no answers. And then there was one small detail, overlooked at first, but it changed everything. In the autopsy report, the forensic pathologist noted a faint fracture along Emily's pelvic bone, not from blunt force, but from prolonged malnutrition. Malnutrition. A woman who had survived so much. A mother who had never been diagnosed with any serious illness. A person who said she was going to visit her children was found frail, starved, and likely hadn't eaten regularly in days. When asked about this, Emily's mother, Charlene, went silent for a long moment. Then she said a sentence that would later become the heart of all debate. She hadn't been herself for months before she disappeared. After staying quiet through many interviews, Charlene finally opened up about Emily's last few weeks. She was up late most nights, talking in her sleep, barely ate. Sometimes she'd go 3 days without speaking to me, then call sobbing at 3 a.m. But it wasn't the first time. Emily had been through depressive spells before. She'd left behind scraps of handwritten notes, some aimless, some confessional. One found after her disappearance read, "I don't know how to be a mother when I don't even know who I am anymore." There was no direct evidence that Emily meant to harm herself, but when no signs of violence, no third-party involvement, and no concrete leads emerged, the most uncomfortable question began to surface. Did Emily walk into the woods alone and simply never come back? It was a cruel theory, but one some investigators quietly began to consider. They pointed to Emily's instability. the emotionally charged relationships with both Marcus and her mother, no steady job, living off the generosity of friends. And maybe the weight of it all had finally tipped too far. Her family rejected that idea, forcefully. Emily loved her children, Charlene said. She would never. I don't believe for a second she'd leave them behind. But there was a strange truth no one could explain. In the 3 weeks before she vanished, Emily hadn't visited her children, even though they lived less than an hour away, and no one knew why. A close friend revealed. She said she felt drained. She didn't go into detail, but I think she felt like everything was collapsing at once. Maybe Emily was hurt. Maybe she was running. Or maybe no one hurt her. Maybe no one helped her either. Maybe the real question isn't who killed Emily, but did anyone even try to save her? Because sometimes a person doesn't need to be murdered to disappear. They just need to be ignored, little by little, until they become nothing but an echo in the woods. One no one's listening for anymore. The real mystery, someone once said, isn't where Emily went. It's why no one went with her. The disappearance and death of Emily Strite has no indictment. No official suspect. No trial. No headline naming a killer. And to this day, it remains recorded simply as missing under unknown circumstances, remains recovered, cause of death undetermined. Charlene still keeps a box of Emily's things. An old notebook, a photo of her daughter smiling with 3 of her kids, a purple hair clip she found in the woods, unsure if it truly belonged to Emily or if she just needed something to believe in. Police say they did everything possible within legal limits, but her family doesn't believe that. Because if this had been a white woman in a wealthier neighborhood, would they have waited 8 days to open a missing persons file? Would they have refused to search the woods behind the house? A black woman, a mother of 4, living on the kindness of others, struggling with instability. Perhaps she was the perfect victim for indifference. Maybe Emily wasn't murdered, but she was absolutely abandoned. Abandoned by the system, by the community, by the people who once claimed to love her, and maybe even by herself when she no longer had the strength to fight her way back. No one knows what her final moment looked like. There were no witnesses, no cameras, no scream, just the soft rain of early spring and a patch of forest no one bothered to walk through. We don't know if she chose to go or was forced to. All we know is today, 4 children are growing up with a silence no one can fill, and a mother still drives from fair to fair, handing out flyers, as if her daughter had gone missing just yesterday. And if one day you're driving through the town of DeSoto, look toward the woods. Maybe you'll see what the rest of us missed.